Shame is a felt sense. It's really hard to put into words. It's a feeling. It's this horrible sensation in the pit of your stomach. It's the thing that you don't want to be mentioned at like dinner tables, or it's that like the elephant in the room, like that kind of horrible feeling. When we feel ashamed of something, it's deeply within our body. No one is born with shame. No child enters this world with shame. We take on shame. It is given to you. Shame is something that we carry, but no one starts like that. But shame is this burden. It's a heaviness that we're weighed down by, and we spend time, money, the Band-Aid fixes, trying to hide and disguise something that we think is going to make us so isolated we can't possibly show it. Like, I am ashamed of my shame if I have it. I don't want you to see it.
Right.
I'm going to do everything I can to keep you so far away from my shame.
Welcome to Whole Plus, the podcast that embraces and tackles the holistic way, bringing it all together: science, research, innovations in technology, and our collective human experience. This is where science and spirit come together. I'm Dr. Taz, your host and a double board certified medical doctor, an integrative health expert, a nutritionist, and an acupuncturist. I'm also the founder and CEO of Whole Plus, a digital and clinical platform where my team and I practice evidence-based holistic medicine every single day. I know and I hear all the health and wellness noise that's out there. I want this show to be the one to empower you with the knowledge you need to heal not just your body, but your relationships, your communities, and our world. Welcome to Whole Plus. Over the years, one of the things that I've learned for sure is that healing is simply not one-dimensional. It is really the accumulation of our 5 bodies, and we often hold our wounds in many different layers of the body. Over time, it turns into disease, especially when we don't deal with it. I've struggled to be 100% honest in the exam room, trying to lead people and help them deal with these emotional and energetic wounds. That's my motivation in inviting this next guest. Please meet Annalie Howling. She's a globally sought-after performance coach, a trauma specialist, and the author of Unapologetic: Unshackle Your Shame, Reclaim Your Power. With over 2 decades of experience, Annalie has worked with leaders in business, Olympians, Hollywood, members of the armed forces, including ex-UK Special Forces, along with private clients navigating transitions and challenges. But her work goes much deeper than performance. It addresses the universal weight that underpins so much of our collective human struggle: shame. Through her work and her book, she shares valuable insights on navigating divorce, relationships, single parenting, overcoming narcissistic partners, recovering from workplace toxicity, and most importantly, releasing family trauma. Please join me in welcoming Annalie Howling to the show and to Whole Plus. All right, Annalie, I am so excited to have you here. I have to tell you why I wanted you on the show. I have been working with patients for over 15 years. Between myself and my team, we've probably seen close to 60,000 patients across our clinics. And we work really hard to get people better, right? We really want them to live this vibrant, optimized life. But oftentimes we get stuck. And that stuckness is usually around what I'm calling 2 different layers of the body: the emotional body and the energetic body. And as we have the luxury of time to spend with our patients and we're able to sort of unwind their stories and understand what's happened, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of grief. There's this heaviness that no matter how much healthy food or supplements or wellness routines they put into place, there's a block. And as a medical doctor, I often feel super frustrated in the exam room that I can't lead them past this block. And I know that that's the block. And so I think it's really important for us to start talking more about shame and trauma, and then not just talking about it individually. Because the other thing that I know for sure, and that I've observed honestly over and over again, is that you bring your shame and you bring your trauma into a family unit, into a business unit, into a community, and then of course we can talk about the globe, getting way out there. So that's my selfish motivation for having you here today, and I'm so excited you're here. I know you have a brand new book out, talk to us about what's happening out there and maybe what was your inspiration for writing this book.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me here. I feel really connected to you already. I love that. One of the things I hate the most is the perfectionism that is a pathway for shame, which is like a pathogen, which is from this wellness routines.
Right.
The morning routine makes me so angry. To me, it's just yet another place first thing in your day for you to fail at. So, I didn't home make organic granola. I'm a single mom. I didn't home make organic granola for my daughter. What a slummy cow I am. You know, I didn't make a ceremonial matcha journal. Spoiler alert, I'm a therapist and a coach. I don't journal. Doesn't work for me. My handwriting is appalling. It stresses me out.
There with you.
Yeah,
that's my team.
I voice note myself instead and just wang on to myself. So I absolutely love that you're talking about this, because I just feel that, as in a lot of places, especially as you'll see with medicine, there are so many of these systems and structures and people, and this links into why I wrote this book. There are people in my space, and I've no doubt in yours, that are not hoping to help people. They are profiteering from people's pain. And I cannot be with that.
I can't stand that.
I cannot be with it. And the thing that upsets me the most, and again, I've no doubt the same with you, because when you do work with clients and when you do sit with people and when you do have the honor and privilege of hearing them share things vulnerably, maybe because they're just so broken they can't hold it in anymore, which is usually the moment probably we both get them. Me probably later than you, because people tend to repress the internal stuff, like maybe you treat if the physical body stops you.
I don't know. I have a gift of making everybody cry. So I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure.
We're kind of linking it. You and I probably, we should do something together. So for me, when I get that opportunity and that privilege to witness and listen to somebody, and then I see in my space and in yours people that are peddling absolute sort of snake oil and sign up to my course and it's $99 and it'll solve your anxiety. And the worst thing for me about that is, if I was buying an apartment, I kind of expect a realtor to give me a bit of a schmooze. I expect that maybe there is a leaky window or it's not all that, know. But when someone is vulnerable, they're in deep pain, they are deeply entrenched in shame, and they are reaching out to try and do anything to help themselves, and someone knows it's not going to work. And then when they try and do this thing, 5,000 people, it cured their anxiety, they're fine, and it doesn't work for you, guess who wins again? Shame.
Yeah.
I'm broken. It didn't work for me. What's wrong with me? Why can't I? I'm the only one. And there are, like I say, organizations and individuals who are sat there just continually kind of profiteering from this huge audience of people who are so overwhelmed and so vulnerable, and the bit that breaks my heart the most, desperately trying to help themselves, and they are unable to, because the systems in place are not designed to make them better.
Well, I almost feel like too, in the culture we're in today, Instagram and all these things, while we all love them and we're all on them, right, it almost intensifies or reinforces that message, right? Because it's maybe I should be doing that, or I'm not as good as that, or I don't know. It just continues to create this cycle of negativity and self-doubt, and I'm not good enough, that type of thing. And that's a lot of where this shame comes from too.
Yeah, absolutely. The comparison. And I think as well, things that maybe you do like about yourself, it makes you question that.
Yeah.
So maybe you're let's go for body image. Maybe you're actually, I should be more like this, or I shouldn't be more like that. And we can then be questioning, even if we, maybe something we did think was quite nice about ourselves, that's not right, and I need to push myself into a different dynamic. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that there are so many ways, systems and places to revalidate our shame, which is deeply entrenched within us, this deeply rooted belief, limiting belief that we have. No one is born with shame. No child enters this world with shame. We take on shame. It is given to you. Shame is something that we carry. I'm sure we'll get into this from a variety of other places, as I write about in the book. But no one starts like that. But shame is this burden. It's a heaviness that we're weighed down by. And we spend time, money, the Band-Aid fixes, trying to hide and disguise something that we think is going to make us so isolated we can't possibly show it. I am ashamed of my shame if I have it. I don't want you to see it.
Right.
I'm going to do everything I can to keep you so far away from my shame. And that was what happened to me. That's what I was trying to do.
So you were bearing your shame.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, you've got to tell us that story.
Sure.
So if you're comfortable, you've got to tell us that story.
Completely. I do want to trigger warning it though, because I am going to talk about self-harm, because that was part of my journey. So just anyone else that's suffering, just to say that I'm going to go there. So for myself, I grew up in a very violent childhood. My father was incredibly violent and my mother colluded. So what that meant was when my father would hurt me, I mean, there was one time that he punched me in the face in a restaurant when I was about 7. And at the time at school, the boys in my classes were going through adolescence and quite often would get nosebleeds. I think it was a bit of a sort of growth journey for boys. I remember it was a holiday in Spain and we got back to the apartment that my mother hadn't come for dinner. She was hypochondriac, and I could see her and my father looking between one another like, oh, this is pretty bad this time. Like, this was not the first time he'd been violent, but this was like bad. There's
and
blood
always towards you?
Always towards me. Blood on my shirt. Yeah, never her. Blood on my shirt. And it was like, this is pretty bad. You know, what are we going to do? They looked to each other and I remember they both turned to me and she said, well, you did say you'd never had a nosebleed before.
Oh my God.
A bit like, well, you did say you wanted a puppy for Christmas. Oh my gosh. And I remember standing there thinking, you know, 7, this is the 80s, late 80s. So I'm like, I haven't got a phone. I'm in Spain. Can't get home. Haven't got any money. Obviously can't get any of my needs met. And I remember thinking, the amount of advice I was like, this is really fucked up. I knew it was so wrong. But what can you possibly do? And of course they told me it was my fault. And they told me that I was bad and I'd made him do it. And that's what I was told every time he did that. And every time he did that, my mother colluded and corroborated his story and again validates that I was bad. So what that meant was that I had no safe person in my house. I was effectively alone within my family system. And the limiting belief that I took on from that trauma, from that pain, was that I am bad. Shame is a felt sense. It's really hard to put into words. It's a feeling. It's this horrible sensation in the pit of your stomach. It's the thing that you don't want to be mentioned at like dinner tables, or, you know, it's that like the elephant in the room, like that kind of horrible feeling. But when we feel ashamed of something, it's deeply within our body. And so for me, I am bad was this belief that I internalized. And then that became the lens that I saw my world through. I mean, you can imagine the jobs that I did or didn't go for, the relationships I found myself in, the friendships where I accepted scraps, to be honest, because I was so bad. So I'm not going to be asserting my needs in certain dynamics. I'm just lucky to get anything. I'm lucky to get anything at all because I'm so bad. And this for me culminated in me, I talk about it in the book, like going into corporate work. This is before Me Too or anything like that, in sort of real estate and construction. It was very heavily toxically male at that time. I'm not saying it was easy on the guys, it's a tricky industry, but it was very geared towards me being a bit of a corporate courtesan despite having master's degrees. It was like, you know, groped, touched, you'll be here to the end of the drinks, like all these sorts of things. And I think that was almost like Freud would have had a field day with me, like revalidating kind of that time and, you know, constantly trying to outrun this sense of unworthiness. And then I had a huge burnout when I was coming up for 29. And that humbled me to a level that with the body, I just could not keep pushing or outrunning the trauma that I was trying to. I realized that what I've been trying to do was make myself financially secure because that would keep me safe, which meant I never had to go back because home to me was not an option.
Not safe.
Yeah, I couldn't do like Andy and Dev Wears Prada and be like, soz, Vogue didn't work out. Like I'm off to, you know, my parents.
My daughter who told me she's 17. She was like, Dad, is stay-at-home daughter an option? You know? And he was like, no, you have to go to college. So that's not an option.
But there was like, that's not a safe place for me. So it was like, there's no way of going back. So I realized I was trying to outrun like this trauma to make myself financially safe. And then fast forward me getting married, and my marriage was failing, and I had my daughter was really young. She was 3 at the time. And I found myself in the grips of the worst anxiety I've ever experienced. So
I want to stop you for just a minute because I'm listening to the story. First of all, my heart's heavy for you. But secondly, did you ever get help? So you're now married with a child.
Yeah.
Like, was there any sort of support or help?
Not at that time, no. So I had been armoring and repressing my shame. Yeah. And what I've been doing was trying to be really perfect. So you would have seen, you know, not a hair out of place, not a, you know, the perfect hostess, the perfect, you know, the things, the stuff, the busyness, the all bases covered, anxiety, fake control. going forward through any possible solution or situation to try and make sure that I've planned it all out and got everything covered and I'm completely prepared and there's nothing that can, surprise me or throw me off course, because I don't want for a second anyone to see what I'm really like. I'm trying to keep all this in, and that then turned into this anxiety, which is a very helpful form of being able to try and have this sensation of fake control. And that's what I was doing. But then when I got the burnout, when I was suffering from the burnout, a really good friend of mine, this is the sort of first foray into something being different for me.
Right.
She had started this weird woo wacky thing called coaching in LA. And this is like 15, 16 years ago now. Yeah. We're always a little bit behind in the UK. So whatever you start here, we tend to get it a couple of years later, because I think we're a little bit more skeptical. We're like, what's that? So this was not, Wendy Rhodes had not been doing her sexy thing in Billions. This was like, what is this weird? You're all wearing like hemp trousers and got dream catchers. And, But she did this visualization for me. And it was so profound, because obviously I know now, it got straight into my subconscious, got past the noise, got past my defenses that I had layered in. And what it did was it connected me to something that I hadn't had available to me. And it was my wisdom, my knowing, my nurture, if you like. And I had this vision that was so profound. I can still see it now. And some things really came true from it, which is amazing, and still are. And I was like, wow, I need to know everything there is to know about this coaching malarkey. And so I went off to go to California and lived there for a time and studied and I'm type A, so obviously I got every qualification, hence getting a burnout, so like I'm going to go and I'm going to go into that
all
now.
In.
Yeah, all in. Yeah. Every modality, every type of coaching, every then layer on like certification. And that was a way of me starting to change my life out of that career in that industry, because I didn't want to be in that anymore. That was really harming my soul, being in that industry, feeling that was really like adding flames to the fire of feeling unworthy. That was really not serving me. So while I was doing that, while my marriage was imploding, I was also in the grips of self-harm. So the way that my self-harm manifested for me was, it's a form of OCD. I'm sure you'll probably see it. I'm laughing because you're a dog, so I feel like seeing it. So it was skin picking. It was habitual skin picking. But I would, and I write about it really, really openly in the book, I would almost come round. I would always do it in the shower, very ritualized, because the shower was the place I could shut the door from my then husband and child. It was almost like a safe place within a private place I could be. And I now obviously realize that it was me trying to discharge the stress that was living in my body and came out as a form of this OCD, which it was for years. What that then leads to is even more shame, because it was, for me at the time, I was harming myself and I couldn't stop. And it was telling me that I was this weak person, that I was so broken, that I couldn't keep this promise to myself to not do it again. Anyone that suffered any kind of...
mainly picking.
Yeah, very habitualized picking. But it was, I mean, I would come round with blood on my fingers twice a day, every day, for years. And it was, and then of course my skin looks terrible. So then I'm putting layers and layers and layers of makeup on, I'm like late 30s at this point, you look like with acne seemingly, and then you're going into all these like very astringent, harsh acids and treatments, because of course people are going to try and treat you like that, which is, I now know for me, the exact opposite of what I need to do to care for my face, is just be really gentle. And that was the thing that changed all of me, was being gentle in here and then being gentle here as well. Thank goodness, at that time when I was going through that, I actually started doing trauma therapy training around EMDR, so the eye movement desensitization. Yeah, that's my modality. That's what I do for all the people that I work with now, the Olympians and the celebrities and everybody. And when I was studying that, it was like a moment that all the planets aligned, because the coaching work is brilliant. Coaching is fantastic if you have a set goal. Great. If you keep getting in your own way, if you keep sabotaging something, if there are patterns, conscious or unconscious, it's going to get somewhere, but not everywhere. And this for me was this entire full circle moment of not only understanding that I was doing something in my career that was really going to help people, it helped me understand myself in that moment completely. And because I've done a lot of work in performance coaching, I knew all the functional side of the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory. I knew all about that from like functional med and stress and resilience. And so EMDR, you have to understand the physicality of it as well as the impact it's having psychologically. So in that moment, it just went chunk, 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 chunk. And it was so effective for me. And actually, I'm a big try before you buy kind of a girl. I'm never going to recommend anything to a client I don't believe in or do. And I went for EMDR myself around the memory of my father hitting me in that restaurant.
And you're how old at this point now?
when I'm doing the EMDR training, must have been late 30s.
Late 30s.
Yeah, must have been just almost. My daughter was born when I was 35, so let's just say about 38, I would guess.
Okay.
I'm nearly 44 now. So yeah, that'd be about then. And that just was this incredible moment where everything changed, because this belief was no longer in my system. The root of my shame had been removed. I no longer believed for a second my limiting belief. I didn't believe I was bad. And then at that point, everything in my life started to come into form, come into its own colour. And I was also at that time trying to find anything and everything that might help my marriage, that might save my marriage. Right. And I didn't find, spoiler alert, I didn't find it. I am divorced. Spoiler alert, didn't find it. But what I did find was me. And I found these pieces of this girl that either I'd sort of not given up on, but I probably put in a box and just thought, well, let's seal that one up. That was a fun time, or that can't be available to you in this dynamic or this relationship or in your life now, or because I obviously felt very unworthy. And all of a sudden I had opportunities coming back to me. And so that's when absolutely everything changed.
Everything changed. It's so interesting to me, that this pattern of like an abusive home, a dysfunctional home leads to perfectionism, which then leads to self-harm, which then leads to a series of choices that are often not in alignment with really who you are individually as a person or a human being. And I think it takes so long for people sometimes to get to that point, and what I'm hoping is we're talking, if anybody is out there watching or listening and you're feeling sort of this disconnect or you're feeling shameful, there's so many modalities today that are helpful to kind of pull that out and maybe help to reverse that. But you touched on something that I think is also equally important. First of all, I love the whole anxiety. What did you call it? Is fake control. Anxiety is fake control. I think I'm going to use that as a mantra now. I love that. I think that's brilliant. But the other thing that you said, because 28, 29 is also when I got sick, and it led me down this path of holistic and integrative medicine. But what was happening to you right at 28, 29 physically? What were you feeling?
Do you want the list?
What were the symptoms?
I'll give you the list.
Because I want somebody sitting out there to be like, wait, that might be happening to me. And no, it's not in my head. I'm not crazy. There's a deeper, if you're not getting a medical diagnosis, there may be an emotional diagnosis that needs to be made. So what was happening to you?
Happily to tell you. So I remember I was working in the city in London. Big, nice, all the stuff that you in theory need. So I was going to the gym. I was able to get quality food. I was able to get the things that you might need. Yeah. Right. I had IBS, didn't know why. So I was going for every kind of intolerance test you can imagine. And I wasn't intolerant to gluten. I was intolerant to my life. That was what I was intolerant to. But I didn't want to be told that, because what the hell am I going to do if this life that I've gone into and I'm at this age now, how on earth can I change it? So yeah, IBS, very bad. And honestly, it got to points where I was like, was it air conditioning? Was it, and my job involved a lot of eating out, a lot of very high-end Michelin fine dining. I was uncomfortable. I was self-conscious all the time. Skin flare-ups, pain, so some back pain, which I thankfully don't have at all anymore. That was very bad. I remember that. I can remember exactly when that happened. And so that would be inflammation.
Right.
What I now know to be candida overgrowth in the gut. Yeah. But of course, no one can tell you that. They're just like, oh, here. I don't know about, I think that we probably have a similar system, but it was just like, take this, take this, take this, take that. And I was like, this can't be right. And I wasn't feeling better. And then again, knowing now, I think, probably some light depression, actually, some symptoms of that, because you're just so uncomfortable all the time and so anxious and self-conscious about things. And as I said, I was doing all the right stuff that in theory you should be doing. I'm training, I'm exercising, I've got access to good food, I'm eating in Michelin star restaurants. It's not like it's bad food, and yet this is having such an adverse effect on me a lot of the time. And I understand now that I was obviously so inflamed. I would have had such candida overgrowth, and for me, removing stress and shame and healing all of my insides, including with the self-harming, that's the thing that's made the biggest difference. That's the thing that controls my weight. That's the thing that makes me look not too, younger, a little bit Botox, but nothing else. That's the bit that that is what keeps me happy and healthy and pain-free.
And vibrant.
100%. It's the my adrenals must have been so bad. Oh my God.
Shot.
I remember I started doing things like caring for myself in ways like reflexology, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sensitive to that. Like acupuncture as well has I'm like instantly like, I have the best.
Same. Out in 2 seconds.
I have the best acupuncturist. She's amazing and hilarious. But she will put one in me and I'm like, can I drive later? Like just,
right.
But you know, I really feel my system coming down with it. So for me, it was finding my way away from Western med, just being like, there's a wound, stick a Band-Aid on it. I'm like, I've got about 55 Band-Aids on it. And I'm not going to spend every day taking some kind of, I don't know, like Imodium or something. There's got to be a way of me that I need to be able to cure myself instead. This is not a sustainable way to live.
And I think that's the kicker. It's like when the list starts getting so long, your injury may be at a different level.
Yes.
At a different place, for sure. And then did you make a marriage decision in that state?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you're working at that time. It was kind of a, I don't want to do my ex-husband down, but it was sort of it's the age when you're looking around.
Everyone's getting married.
Yeah, that's what I
everyone's
mean.
having babies.
You've been in a long-term relationship for a while. Yeah. You're looking around. Your friends are doing it.
Right.
It was a good, it's a good matching. Like we're getting on really well. We seem to want the same things in the future. So it was kind of it was probably made more with head, but definitely my physicality was in that place as well. It definitely got at that point though. I was transitioning out of my job through to training and coaching, and actually that as soon as I did that, like I say, the gluten intolerance was never a thing. It was the intolerant to my life. It was a huge thing, and as soon as I took that step on the path to reclaiming my parts of myself, even though it was like a path to carry on, everything started to be different. Like I say, my body wasn't holding on to any excess like weight or anything, and you start seeing the results of your training, pain disappearing, all of those things just suddenly started kind of going quite naturally and not having to work as hard at it, because I think all my adrenals and my stress and my nervous system just went, oh thank God she's listened.
Happy. EMDR is the modality that attracted you the most, healed you. There are other modalities as well. Maybe educate everybody on EMDR in itself.
Sure.
Like, how does that work? Why does it work to release something like shame or guilt or trauma? Explain that a little bit.
I would love to. Thank you. I do write about this more in the book, because it's just to give I'm saying that not as a hard sell, just because it is quite a complicated thing, and I think this might resonate. It's the other reason I want to say that. So when we experience trauma, most people know the three main responses: fight, flight, freeze. The two that are less talked about, but in my view hold the most shame: flop, pass out on the spot, not that one. Fawn is number 5.
Say that again?
Fawn.
Like
Bambi, like a little fawn.
Oh.
Now, what fawn is, which is the one that we don't talk about very much, is where we placate our attacker. So in my childhood example that I gave, I became even more of a good girl to my dad, because I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want my dad to cause me harm. I don't want to... Me being myself seems to cause me pain than harm. I get punched, I get hit, I get told I'm wrong, I get potentially ostracized from the family. So I better be really good and what other people want instead. So I start placating my attacker. Now I'm going to trigger warning this again. I have a huge amount of clients that come to me for sexual assault, and I don't believe I've ever had a client that has come to me, and I've had some of the most wicked examples of completely premeditated attacks that you can imagine, like genuinely wicked. Every single person that I've seen feels in some way they contributed.
They caused it.
There was a grey area. I'd had a drink earlier that evening. They were a friend of a friend. We'd had a kiss a year before a party. I'd agreed to something but didn't want to continue with something else. And for me, that is the most essential part of the explanation of the Fawn trauma response. So the 5 trauma responses, as I mentioned: fight, flight, freeze, flop, fawn. If someone was to walk in here right now with a knife, heaven forbid, you and I are probably going to we might have the same response. We might have a completely different one. Our teams are also over here, right? So there's every chance that we're going to react in very different ways. Now that's according to our brains scanning as quickly as possible, knowing our physical state, our mental state, our energy, what's available to us, all of these things. The key thing that I want absolutely everyone to remember listening to this is you never, ever get to select your trauma response. It is chosen for you. Because people hold shame for their reaction or not reacting. So I'll give you a really easy example is, let's just say
so we have no intellectual control over this.
None. And we hold shame. So the great example is a lower level one. Let's just say someone was a bit rude to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, you come away from that and you get in the car and you're like, oh, why didn't I say da-da-da? Like you have a really good comeback.
Right.
And you got like the ultimate answer.
Yeah.
That's because you probably went into freeze. Because you're like, it doesn't mean that you're not good at speaking in public. It doesn't mean you haven't got any confidence. It doesn't mean you're a people pleaser and you haven't got boundaries. It means that you were probably quite shocked in a situation that you weren't expecting, and your body went, this isn't right, and it just went joof, and just chucked a trauma response in for you to kind of, keep yourself safe in that moment. And then we get back and we give ourselves more shame for not reacting in a certain way or having something to say to them.
Right.
Your prefrontal cortex, though I'm pointing to my head for people that aren't looking at the front of your brain, Broca's area language, which sits just behind it, they go completely offline when you're experiencing trauma. Totally gone. Because guess what? I don't need to know what I need from the shops or what time it is. So a lot of people that have been attacked, whether it's sexual assault or another kind of attack or something has happened, they often say, I don't remember what they said. I can't remember what they said.
Because they're frozen.
Right. And it will also mash up times. So it could be like, I think I went to the shop first and then I went into the laundrette. But you can get it mixed up because this blood is going, it's gone to your amygdala or your limbic system, which is the animal part of your brain, which is the one that is firing your survival instincts, which are also the trauma responses to keep you alive in that moment.
Oh my gosh.
Now, sometimes, go back to an assault example. If you go through the trauma responses, Fawn is the only one that's going to keep you alive. Now, I had a client, I've got to be really careful what I say. I had a client that was locked in an area by their assailant. There was no way they could have fought them off. The physicality was completely different.
Not balanced.
Freezing was not going to help or do anything in this example. Flopping, really dangerous, being completely passing out. And then the fight flight, she couldn't run. Doors locked. So the only one left available, I remember it said to me, there was one point that I thought, this went on for hours. She's like, there's one point that I thought I was just going to die. I just thought I'm going to die. So she'd sort of been in freeze. She'd been in and she's like, I just thought, she's like, that's it, I'm going to die. And at that moment, and she had so much shame. She's like, I removed my clothes fully and sort of some things continued. And then she suggested, this just came to her, why don't we continue this at a hotel? And thank God she said it, because that's then what got her out onto a fire escape. And someone, thank the Lord, saw her, immediately put her into a safe place, called for help. And that's sort of what put an end to that attack, which I hate to think where that could have gone. She had so much shame for doing that. She held so much shame, but yet me saying that to you now, you're like, well, you'd do anything, right? You'd do anything. Like, neither of us are judging her. No one's thinking it. Everyone's like, that's so horrendous. I would have done the same thing. Yeah. And then I have people that are like, well, why did I, like I say, why would I reply to a message that they sent me 3 months later when they did something like that? Why would I kiss someone back after they touched me in a way I didn't feel comfortable with? And the answer is because you were terrified. The answer is because you were so afraid.
So we have so much judgment of people. Like, just when you hear stories, right? There's so much judgment. Like, well, you could have done this, or you should have done that, or why didn't you, or...
And the worst judgment comes from you.
Correct. Like, we don't have control over any of that, is what you're saying.
None.
Zero control.
None.
So the expectation to be able to react in a situation like that, intellectually or rationally, is completely ridiculous.
Totally. The other thing that happens is, although the blood is off from your prefrontal cortex, your Broca's area, because it's gone to the amygdala, your brain is still tagging because it thinks it might need some information for the future, almost like building a case, should we say. Yeah. Now, what can happen is, let's just say our assailant came in with a red scarf, and then thankfully one of your team knocked them out, and then we were all fine, and we went, oof, that was horrible and scary, but thank goodness your team were on it. And then I get on my flight home and you go home, and then I could be driving and see a flash of a red scarf, and you could be in a local store and get a smell of perfume or aftershave that was the same as mine even from today. And you could go straight into having an anxiety attack. And you're like, what's going on? I'm in a safe place. I'm with my family. I'm miles away. And then again, you start thinking there's something wrong with you. And then that manifests into anxiety, and then it starts being like, well, I'm just going to avoid going to the shops, because maybe it was being around people. Maybe I'm now having like some agoraphobic reactions, or maybe I need to have some different medications, or maybe I need to, I see people like this manifest into sort of, changing everything about their life. Again, this sort of anxiety-based kind of fake control, because they don't understand what's happening to them. They think, again, there's something wrong with me, and shame wins again. So I really want people to understand you never, ever, ever get to pick your trauma response. And it also doesn't mean you'd have the same one next time. It could well be that, the next time something happens, and if I use the earlier example of someone saying something chatty to you, you might go, oh, excuse me. It depends on the day. But in a very extreme example with assault, and that also happens in other situations where there is a really disproportionate level of power or rank. It can happen with narcissistic bosses. I gave the example earlier of how I used to work and be touched up, and I'd have a boss stood there. One of my bosses has done it to me years ago, and I didn't do anything about it. I was terrified. Knowing now my childhood situation, I cannot lose my job. I'm saving up money for a house because I can't go back to my home because my parents are horrible, evil people who hurt me. So I have to keep this job, which means me going along with, supposedly, seemingly, was I up for it? Was I encouraging it? Did I wear a skirt too short? Did I walk in a certain way? Did I give him a look? Obviously, I know now, no. But at that time, adding on to this limiting belief, you can end up, like I say, being in this fawn response in other ways in your life as well. And then the layer that lives on top of that, which is another place people shame themselves for, is people pleasing. Because I think most of us never ever want to get to a place where we are faced with something traumatic or even conflict. So what we try and do is placate, because we do not want to find ourselves with things escalating and becoming difficult. And that's why the book's called Unapologetic, because so many times we just say, sorry. Sorry, babe. Sorry. I didn't mean, I've been talking too much. I didn't mean to take from you. Sorry, darling. Oh, sorry. Is it okay? I'm so sorry is it all right if I just do this here? Do you mind if Oh, sorry. If I started crying, if you did, the likelihood is the first thing one of us says is, oh, sorry, because my emotions are too messy and too big and I'm taking up too much space. And I really want us to, this shame work for me, shame is a root and it lives so deeply in your system, but we can pull it out. And if we get it out, we just stop minimizing and stop dimming ourselves, and we realize we have nothing to apologize for being us.
So powerful. So getting it out, EMDR
is a method. Yep,
is a method. What are the other methods?
So another great method is just sorry to answer your first question. So EMDR is where you bilaterally stimulate. So the prefrontal cortex stays online along with the amygdala. So what that means is quite often you have flashbacks from traumatic memories and things pop into our head all the time. And that means the amygdala is like sort of going live. It's like a record, like an old vinyl record that's just going round and round and round. When you have the prefrontal cortex on as well, because you're bilaterally stimulating with eye movement, tapping or tapping like that, you keep all three areas on. So when people ask you to do breath counting and breath work when you're feeling anxious, it's because you keep your prefrontal cortex on because of the counting. No one ever tells you that. No. So it's like, do breath work, and you're like, why? And it's like, if you're feeling anxious, because you're anxious, you're going into your amygdala, your limbic system, you're getting aroused in that sense, your nervous system's being really activated. By counting your breath, you're keeping your prefrontal cortex online, which means you've got all areas of your brain, if you like, to discharge what's happening. Okay. So that's effectively what we're doing with EMDR, but on a much bigger level, to discharge these big memories. So I'm sorry, I cut over there because I wanted to make sure I answered that question.
Yeah, definitely. So with EMDR, I know every person's different. How many sessions? How long is a session?
So I won't do it online. I think I'd be a gazillionaire if I did by now. I haven't found a piece of technology that I'm comfortable with, right? Whereby I'd be happy to say, because the other thing, as you'll appreciate, so when your prefrontal cortex is switched off, the funny, or not funny, the kind of paradox of trauma is it becomes a bit like space junk, or a bit like a magnet. And so then it starts attracting other things to it to almost revalidate the shameful belief and other things. So when you open someone up, you can be opening up more than one thing. There can be things that are deeply repressed. And so for me, if I'm opening someone up, I want to personally be there to help them back together again if some other things are coming out. So, but there are other practitioners that do it online. I don't. With me, I tend to do one session. I do one big session. I go all through childhood, all through family, all through limitations, what might be going on for them. And we pick an event to work on. And due to the fact that it's threaded together in such an intrinsic way, when you pull that string, we pull it all out. I may see someone again for something that's like kind of unrelated. I'll often do a phobia after that. I'll often do like big spiders.
A single session?
I do. But I work differently. The only way it would be different would be if it's very recent. So PTSD is defined as 3 months on and longer. If something is within 3 months, that's a recent traumatic event, in which case you treat it differently. Mm-hmm. So, for example, let's just say we've been in a bank robbery, but thankfully we're both okay. Mm-hmm. But we would treat, if that was last week, I'd be going through every single element and treating it as an individual session of like when you first went into the bank, when the person first came in, when the police arrived. Like we do each one of those as a session. But after 3 months, it kind of blobs and merges into one. And we tend to get like one clear memory. Mm-hmm. And then again, like I say, that can kind of attract and merge with other limitations and beliefs. But I think I work in quite a different way. This is a blend of a lot of different coaching work and things that I've done. But with me and my clients, I've never needed to see someone more than once for one event.
Amazing. So with EMDR then, just so I understand it more completely, I know you're using multiple parts of the brain at the same time. That's the general premise. But how is that actually releasing what I often call the vibration of shame? How is that actually releasing that?
So because you get all parts of your brain, I love this question. So because you get all parts of the brain on, we aren't living in that emotional reflex, which again is the feeling, the felt sense of shame. Yeah. And it is, you feel it. You know, I'm sure you've probably got a few things that are kind of kicking around, right? So there's like a little,
there's a list.
As we're talking, there's probably a few things that are coming up. I'm aware of that. So, you know, and I had that memory that went through my head every time. And it was, as soon as a memory came up, the feeling of shame was there as well. It was like so somatic. So when you go through the body, and I do body scan work as well while I'm doing it, but we have the prefrontal cortex available as well, you get a whole new wave of information. If you like, the picture gets coloured in. So as I start going through the session, you suddenly get people going, actually, that wasn't right. They had done this first, or this had happened first, or I hadn't done that. And then you go through another round of the session. It's like, and they get more and more information. They basically get the whole picture in full colour. Now, when that happens, immediately, in the best part of my job, and I love it, and I should also get paid for anti-aging at this point, because I literally see people's face drop, their shoulders drop, and they're exhausted, and they just suddenly go, there was nothing else I could have done. It wasn't my fault. I was just a child. I didn't deserve it. I've always been worthy. It's just unbelievable, because what happens is you get self-compassion. Because we have this like confusion when we're just living in that emotional part of the brain, when we don't have all the information, we end up filling in the gaps. And because we're us and we're a bit self-critical, we don't necessarily fill it in the nicest way. We don't go in and being like, oh, I'm sure it was fine. Like, you know, anxiety the next day after a big night out or something like that. Or like, oh, why'd you say that? You know, we tend to give ourselves a really tough time. So the great news for your audience is you don't have to have a session with me, which is highly privileged. I wrote the book to remove the privilege from being able to come and see someone like myself or you, because the reality of our logistics, location, cost, I get it. So I tried to do something that would really make an impact and change people's lives, that was accessible to everybody. So great news, everyone. Cure for shame, self-compassion. Sounds great. And it is. It's quite hard to cultivate compassion for yourself, because what we do is we nibble away at our self-compassion with self-criticism. It's much easier. You listened to me and you were so kind, and you said, you're really sorry to hear that. Like, you could have probably such a swell of empathy and compassion for me and my story. And rationally, you probably know that you haven't deserved some of the things that have happened to you. But we nibble away in that. There's some self-doubt, there's some self-criticism, there's our inner critic imposter syndrome that just starts to diminish that resource for ourselves. So an exercise that anyone can do, and I'd really encourage everyone to do this, is if it's a childhood memory, if you can connect to your inner child, great. If not, pick your own kid, niece or nephew.
I'm like about to go.
Let's do it. Do it.
All right.
Let's have the moment.
I know. No, it's just, it just resonates. So
your inner child?
I don't know.
Or your daughter?
I think everyone. So,
Okay.
There's a lot. There's a lot of, I mean, I also came from a dysfunctional home. And I was kind of the fixer, you know, so.
You held the burden.
Yes. So I don't know why it's bringing it up as you're talking. So sorry.
Please don't say sorry.
I just said sorry too. Oh my gosh. I just did everything you said not to do. So
I mean that in the most loving way. I mean it as in the, you know, for me, it's an honor that you're able to share your emotion with me. And other people. It's an honor to do that. Well, it's incredibly painful. I remember that the memory of my father, hitting me, and I would, obviously I knew it was wrong.
Right.
But I'd be like, well, probably was, maybe I did say the wrong thing. Maybe I was a bit too much.
Well, it's a lot of like, when you talk in vibration, I don't know why that word keeps coming up for me, but vibration or frequency, but like when there's that frequency or vibration of anger, for example, or violence, and you kind of grow up a little bit around it, and you start walking on eggshells, around it and things like that, then you do respond in strange ways in your life, right? Like you either become a perfectionist or you try to be the good girl. Yeah, I've played all those roles, you try to be the perfect daughter. You think you can fix everyone's stuff, probably why I became a doctor, So, but it is a thing, and it is something. And so the fact that there's an opportunity to unseat that, I think is huge.
Have you got, obviously you don't need to share it, but can you picture something in your head? Have you got a memory?
Totally. It's like this as you're talking.
Can you picture your daughter at the same age you would have been? Can you see her at that age?
Yeah.
Can you put her in that exact scene and replay it for me?
Yeah.
So she put her in.
It's wrong. Yeah. It's wrong. And there are multiple of those,
And would there be anything that she could have done that would...
No. Absolutely not.
That's what I want you to give to yourself and that little girl.
Yeah.
Was the compassion that there's nothing that she ever did.
Yeah.
But then for me, I keep a picture of my daughter at 7 in my office.
Oh, what a great
for people to be, for me to see,
and
people to be able to connect to, because that was the age that I was when I suffered that particular event that haunted me. I thought about that every day for years. Yeah, like when I was stepping up for a challenge, or going to try for a promotion at work, or put myself out there, and you think, no, don't. Because what if you get it wrong again, and then you get hurt, and then you get, then you're bad and you get shamed again. And I keep a picture of Amber in my office because, it reminds me. And I remember the first time I did that exercise where I put her in that exact situation, and I'm sure you feel the same. I would kill someone, like my lioness one, but also the absolute devastation of the idea of her being that hurt, that afraid, that taking on shame that was never hers, feeling so scared and alone, and her having to go back, with those people in my head, those people that were causing me so much harm, to imagine her in that space. And so this is the exercise that I want to, people, if it's a childhood memory, like I say, to rerun it with your kid, a friend's kid, your inner child, niece or nephew. That. Because we do, like I say, we get in our own way with our own compassion, but you rerun that entire scene with that child, and exactly the reaction you just had, the reaction I had, there is nothing that child could have done to deserve that treatment, not one thing. And if it's an adult memory, I want people to rerun the scene, and you put your best friend in that particular environment, scene, scenario. And again, you tell me if there's one single thing they said, did, drank, whatever, that meant that they in some way were up for it, or deserved it, or whatever it might have been, or did the wrong thing. Because, and then that empathy that you're feeling, turn that towards yourself. Give yourself that self-compassion. And if this is bringing up stuff for people, which I think it probably is, another step that you can take, and actually one of my clients there's client stories in the book that they've gone in, and they would have gone in with their real names, but the lawyers had to change that because some of the people involved in the story are still alive, so the lawyers have to change names. So shall we say, I actually put in the book some names have been changed to give no further platform to the guilty.
I love that.
Yeah, no further platform to you. So there's a lot of my story, and there's some of my client stories very raw in there. And one of the most moving stories, incredible client of mine who was assaulted by a teacher when she was 10, and then after that her mother would come home, and if she was in a bad temper, would strip her and her sister naked and put them out on the street outside. Oh my God. Yeah. So the assault was never discussed, and then would continue to perpetuate shame and make such a humiliating experience. And she says, I was the first person she told after one session. I kept it in for 40 years. And she said the first step is just admitting it to yourself out loud. Stand in front of a mirror, sit in the car on your own, just be in a space, say the thing out loud to yourself, and that I didn't deserve it. So I want to offer that to anyone that this is really resonating, because sometimes I get asked, like, do you think people have a hard time like recognizing their shame? And I'm like, no. I was like, it's a thing that lives here. Like, it's just threatening to come up all the time. It's the stuff, like I said earlier, like if we were at a dinner table, you're like, please don't go near that subject. Please don't talk about, like when I was attacking my own face and I was in the grips of that OCD, I wouldn't want you to talk about marriages not being good. I wouldn't want you to talk about skin or skincare or products. And I used to find like the whole like glass skin trend so triggering because that was like so far from where I felt that I was, and wearing too much makeup because I felt I was trying to cover something up. And there would be subjects. So I was so aware of my shame. But now, thankfully, I talk that I have had two very distinct lives. I had a life that was very shameful, as in it was full of shame. And I have what I believe now my kind of second very exciting chapter where I feel completely free. I have a shame-less life. Like there's truly, if you're like, does she have no shame? Like, no. None. It's all gone. I had loads and now I don't.
So how do we, thinking about us as mothers and families, how do we make sure that we are raising our children to be unapologetic?
Yeah.
That our family structure, because I'm even thinking, again, not to overshare, of just even our unit, where I know like my sweet husband has been through hell and has his own shame. How do we support people within a family unit? How do you not gift shame on to the next generation or latch shame onto you from a previous generation? How do we deal with all of that? Because I know there's the individual, right? But then there's also what we bring in and how we influence one another. So curious about that.
So I guess a way of not bringing the past forward is to check in on where you're speaking from. So am I coming from an I am? Am I in a limiting place right now? Am I experiencing shame? And recognizing that felt sense is very different to an anxiety. Like I say, we could write out our anxious thoughts really easily. Like it's usually very readily available. Like all the anxieties is like on the constant ticker. But shame, like I say, is this more sort of this deeper felt sense, this embodied sense. And if we're acting from that place, that's a very different feeling. So that's something that I would say to be exploring, the hereditary, the shame from like family from before us as well. It's recognizing where those where it's not in alignment with your values either. Like one of the great questions to ask yourself is this mine? I'm having this feeling, I'm having this thought, I'm having this experience. Is it mine?
Right.
Or was I given it? I should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be more like this. Like that is often the language of kind of the inner critic, but the inner critic, which acts as the custodian of your comfort zone, is also trying to make sure that shame never gets a look in, because we want to keep a lid on our shame, keep it down, keep it down, keep it down. So that's a good way of kind of checking in on things coming from the past. With regards to our children, there's something that I do with Amber, and there's separating them out from any action. So let's just say something has happened, or you're delivering some news, or you're worried about their reaction to something, and then we're trying to be really sensitive to whatever's going on, or maybe they've done something that's a bit crappy, you don't like it, it does happen. So with her, I always try and separate out my love for her and her safety to the action.
Okay.
So she's younger, but it would go along the lines of, Amber, there is not 1 second that I don't love you.
Right.
Not 1 second that I don't love you. However, the thing that you did or that happened was dangerous, or I didn't like it because. But my love for you, our relationship, your safety is never in question. Never. But we do need to address the action, the thing, because I always say to her, the only time she'll ever hear me raise my voice if she might hurt herself or someone else, like as in, like really. So, and obviously I don't like any kind of cruelty. Like I'm the most sensitive person and working in this world, so I'm sure you do. Like I'm talking about the profiteering from pain. I just can't be with any pain. So she knows anytime I'm ever going to be like raising my voice if she's running by a swimming pool or something like that, where it could actually be, please don't do that, darling. Like, but I separate out her from the action. And then another thing, I just don't think either you can overlove your kids. I really don't. You can spoil them with stuff. You can make them a bit entitled, sure, with things maybe. But that well of love and connection and safety, you can't go overboard on that. Like you really can't. And I think that making sure that they're having this, this ability to discuss things with you at whatever level they can, the safety to have a conversation. Potentially there are some, if your husband's had a tricky time and he's got some shame in there, generally speaking, he may be trying to take on a role and feeling ashamed of having certain feelings, and that again is breaking down communication. So trying to make sure they always stay really open. And then for smaller ones, I have to catch myself not calling Amber a good girl. I have to put the words back in my mouth. And we've recently filmed a series. You've met my amazing head of all of my brand and everything over there. And we recently filmed this series with a friend of mine and me and my daughter, where I'm speaking to her as I was spoken to, and things like, I want you to go over there and give that person a hug. You don't want to go make them feel bad now, do you? And the response to that video, and she's going, no, like, sorry. And I'm like, go on, be a good girl. And it's like the first time that you gave away your autonomy and your agency and your needs went so far below someone else, like a stranger in this case, to please your parent. This strange big figure that you don't know, and you learn to meet their needs even though you were deeply uncomfortable. And we take on that stuff early. So I, say she's tidied up her bedroom or something, I'm trying not to reward her on tasks and acts. I'm trying not to tell her she's a good girl. I still say thank you so much, it's so great. Yeah, it really is. It really is. I'm not perfect. And people will be like, I heard you call her a good girl in the airport. Probably did. Sorry. Sorry, not so, I'm trying desperately, but another way of me trying to validate her as well is not on things she's doing. I say to her, Amber, do you know what? You're so easy to love.
Oh, I like that.
You are so easy to love exactly as you are.
I love that.
Because, she is beautiful and she is awesome and she is clever and she is sassy as hell and she's all the things. Classic Gemini. She's all the stuff. Like, she's amazing. But I really want her to know that her being her is so fucking lovable.
Yeah. I love that. And that's how we can support our families.
Exactly.
And that's how we can parent better.
Exactly.
Support one another. We talked about EMDR. Before you leave us today, are there other modalities that we can use to release shame and trauma? Shame
is a very, like I said, it's an embodied felt sense. And I'm a big fan, much like how I hate the perfect morning routine. I don't want to be prescriptive for people. Right. So the reason I've written the book in the way that I have is shame cannot survive when we're, bringing it into the light, when we're sharing our stories. There's expert interview in there as well about medical systems, about places that we're given it, about, structures and systems that we're given it. There's my stories as the client interviews. And as soon as we start opening up and cracking this open, it starts being able to move, because it is the issues in your tissues, shame. So I would encourage anyone to do anything somatic based that works for them. If it's breath work, cool. If it's yoga, yoga is said to be the second best thing after EMDR. Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, he advocates for yoga and EMDR. And they're the lowest, you don't need to use medication so that if you don't want to. I would genuinely though, if you're a walk in nature person, if you're a punch bag person, if you're a embodied dance and get some music, I've done that with a lot of clients, get some music on and either screamy dance or jump up and down or some kundalini shaking, that's a great one. Like, whatever it is that works for you. And again, almost take that act of what works for you rather than what you're being told to do as a kind of step into reclaiming your own power, that this mix of it even is what's going to work for me today. And then, as I say, there's the couple of exercises of working on it more internally as well, even beginning to just name it out loud to yourself, like, I have drunk the Kool-Aid, I am shameless, I can sit here and talk about all of these things really openly. I don't want anyone to feel any pressure to do that. The first step can absolutely be just admitting it out loud to yourself and being with that and finding a way to work your body through that as well. Walking is an amazing tool because your eyes are bilaterally scanning the horizon as you walk. So it's actually a really good way of, tricky conversations are great on a walk as well, because you're side by side with someone rather than like face to face. And you'll keep, and also with the movement, the actual physical movement, you're discharging stress from your body as you move, but it's quite gentle, and your eyes are scanning the horizon. So maybe that's a good time to take out, you can have my book on an audiobook, or you can just be taking some thoughts out with you. Have your AirPods on silent. I've done that before, plenty. No one knows you're not listening to something. And take your thoughts and your feelings out and just allow yourself to process it as your body is moving gently, and as your eyes are scanning the horizon. You're going to be able to keep yourself online a lot more.
I love that. So interesting. There are cultures that shame is a through line for women, for children, for families. I think it still comes back to the individual, right? Even if you're dealing not within a nuclear unit, but a broader unit, you still come back to you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you can be the thing that changes everything. I really do believe that. Like, this is not a book.
Yeah.
This is a movement.
I love that.
I did not write a book. I'm a custodian. Yes, there's my story. Yes, there's a huge amount of me. But this is a movement that we're starting. And if everybody takes this forward and becomes, 1% more self-compassionate, they become 1% less, when shame tries you, go, not this time, pal.
Yeah.
If we just go, nah, do you know what? I'm not taking that from you today.
Yeah.
I'm going to take myself on a walk or do something kind for me, or just, I don't believe you anymore. Shame is a liar. Shame is absolutely a liar. And whatever it's telling anyone right now, even if we just believe 5% less of their lies, that is going to make a seismic shift. And this is what's coming. This is the antidote. I say that radical self-love is the antidote to the self-doubt that we're feeling. And that is what we're creating right now.
That's so powerful. So powerful. Thank you so much for taking time out today.
I loved it.
I actually, please don't laugh, I actually feel, okay, I do all this energy scanning and all this business, and we have, even within the clinic, we have a tool that can measure vibration and can map out to a certain extent what emotions people are experiencing. Shame comes up sometimes.
Oh, I bet.
Guilt, the whole happiness, joy, all of it, like all of it will come up. Every time I've gone and done like an energy session or a Reiki session or any of these tools, I'm always told, like, you're blocked. You're blocked. You're blocked. Literally, as I'm sitting here talking to you today, I actually feel unblocked.
Oh, I love that.
I actually feel like someone took something off my chest.
I love
So that
that
goes back to your point, and I promise I'm not making this up, but that goes back to your point that shame is a feeling. And then that feelings create dis-ease.
Completely.
And feelings create dysfunction. And so if you're not feeling good, instead of blaming yourself for thinking what I hear day in and day out, it's in my head, I'm getting old, it's my fault. Like, these are the mantras that we hear over and over again. It might be time to think about something different and try something different. So I love that this book is out to guide people. I'm going to be using it, obviously. I need it. So I'll be using it as well. So thank you so much again. And then my last question.
Yeah.
What makes you whole?
I think my girl.
Your girl. My girl. We have yet to have anyone that doesn't say family.
Oh yeah, I was going to say love,
Everyone
but I think
says
that's
family. Their daughter, their husband, their family.
She has a little saying which I love. And she goes, "Mummy, made my heart feel full." So that's what it made me think.
That.
Made my heart feel full.
Made my heart feel. Well, this has made my heart feel full. So thank you so much for taking time out to join us. So this book, incredible. I actually want a copy. I obviously need it. Where can people find your book?
So it's everywhere. It came out. We're filming this in New York in May, so it's just come out. So I've signed some copies. It's so you'll find it Barnes and Noble, Target, Amazon, lots of independent bookstores as well, retailers. It's globally released. It's everywhere. It's in Australia. It's in people's hands all over the world. That's what I mean about the movement.
It's a movement.
It's a movement. And right now we've got limited edition. You're gonna have one of these. A limited edition cover. A Life Without Shame. A Life Reclaimed, a Life Fully Yours.
Such important work. I am so glad that you are talking about this. I'm so glad that you've started this movement. Thank you for taking time out to join me today. I really appreciate it. And for everybody else watching or listening, thank you for staying in tune with us on this episode of Whole Plus. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Whole Plus. Be sure to share this episode with your friends and family. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. To engage with the community, follow @LiveWholePlus and check out our website, wholeplus.co. That's HOLPLUS.co for more resources and information on holistic health. See you next time.